everybody. Welcome to week 7. Just Laura and I are here in person, and Lisa, you want to say hi?
Hi, everyone.
She is she has a snow day and is having trouble with connecting her internet, so she's home. All right, so for just a couple announcements, reminding people to please comment on each other's comments. We're really trying to replicate a classroom setting as much as possible, and part of that is discussion. So we really need to have you go on and interact with each other. That's pretty critical, just so you can look at each other's ideas and interact with those. So that's that. For Torch, please make sure you're also commenting on the videos on Torch. We think everybody can access it at this point, so if you can't, please let us know. But hopefully everybody's all right. Some people have said that they are behind in their work. Please let us know what we can do to help. Next week is going to be very light in hopes that everyone's going to get up to speed and get you caught up. If you are done and you are completely caught up, let me know and I will send you any extra readings or videos. And if there's something specific you want to know about, let me know and I will tailor that to what you're interested in. And for your comments that you are making or any other pieces you feel are missing, let us know if you want to hear more about a subject or want to talk about one of the things that came up during class comments. All right, so we're going to move ahead now. We're going to talk about the Chrisman article for a little bit. I'm going to pull something that Katie found really interesting. She said that helping students to learn to deal with uncertainty and to take productive risks while working with their ideas in a creative way can enhance their work. So this was just, I thought it was a quote from the article that she thought was really interesting in trying to help students deal with that, which is sometimes not only difficult for them work-wise, but emotionally. So setting up some structure that will help with that. And that's another principle that Katie had mentioned was that perceiving and taking perspectives intelligently. I think that's really interesting because as we're going to be working over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be talking about empathy and its role in design. And that not only helps with emotionally with kids, helping them with design, but also ties in nicely with literacy and making inferences. So I think Chrisman is a really good jumping off point for you guys to think about that.
And in the Chrisman, Becky had also given an example with her own classroom of students that work really fast. They jump right into the building, and the students that want to slow down a little bit, think a little bit more about the criteria and constraints of their project, and what happens when those two students are paired together. And typically the faster acting students tend to dominate because they just jump right in. And this really illustrates the importance of incorporating those slowdown steps into the design process so all ideas get heard and students build the best solution and not necessarily the fastest solution.
Which I think also helps with materials that the kids who are faster acting, they run over and start grabbing things and some of the other kids are left with nothing or very little materials. So it helps balance that as well, some classroom management. Lisa, did you want to add?
Yep. Kathy noted some great points also from that she had taken from the Chrisman and Adams paper. She stated, I thought the section on matrix pattern, tactic versus reflective design thinking was really interesting to read and think about in both planning for the future and thinking back on past events. She also actually brought up a point about using portfolios. In my classroom, I like to use novel engineering notebooks with the students where it's sort of like a diary or a portfolio of sorts where the kids can look back on for reflection. They can review what's worked in the past, and they can also review to check how well their solutions met their goals.
Yeah, so definitely that's a great idea. We've seen that used. It helps them as they're going over trajectory. Some teachers just add pages in. Others give them a whole packet for the entire unit. So definitely it's what works well with you, but we can talk a little bit more about that as you are planning. Oh, is that me again? Okay. So moving on to the backpack video, tying in this theme of empathy, Paul also noticed that the people who designed the backpack had a lot of empathy for Jamie, noticing that he might not want to carry a purse. So again, inferring based on what they know about males and the book, what might be a good design for that. So you see them balancing multiple constraints, some which are in the book and some which aren't. All right. So, do you want to move? Anybody else want to say anything about the backpack video before we move on?
No, that's,
all right.
That's good. That's
okay.
Good.
So we're going to move on to the Talking Science primer. I think. Is that all we have here? And Do you want to get to the door for a second? We need to put something up there. So just one of the points, I think we'll talk about this more after you do your one-page, we see some of the one-page reflections, but looking at the teacher as a facilitator, and this really gave some good strategies for modeling productive discussion and for helping kids to pull that in.
And honestly, page 11 of the Talk Science primer, I keep on my desk. I laminate it, keep it on my desk. It talks about the 9 talk moves. That has been such a game changer in the classroom for me to try to change the role where we're giving the students. It's not so much as I'm a facilitator. I talked about that a few weeks back. Really, this helped me hand the discussion over to the students, really start to think about why they're thinking what they're thinking and giving examples and providing evidence for their ideas, especially during group discussions. So that talk moves, the goals for productive discussions and 9 talk moves is a great tool to just kind of keep handy during your novel engineering discussion.
Great. I think some people had already sort of made some notes about things that they thought would work well in their classrooms. So hopefully we're really interested to see what you guys pull from that in your one-page paper. So moving on,
what did I miss? List of books.
We've moved on to your turn, yes.
Okay. So for the list of books that you guys have compiled, I know that some of you guys are not generalists or you're not English teachers. So you mentioned that you don't know what books are being read in the current grades that you teach. So conferencing with English teachers at your school to figure out what books they're already reading is a great idea. We highly encourage making novel engineering as interdisciplinary as possible. You can talk to your English teachers, math teachers, history teachers, and science teachers.
Yeah, and I think adding to this that we don't have office hours just because we know everybody has a completely different schedule and there's a good chance people wouldn't use it, but that doesn't mean you can't email us and contact us to set up a time to talk. Even if it's just a few minutes, if you want to talk about a couple books or you're not really sure what to do, we're more than happy to do that because we definitely want to make sure everybody has a book that they're excited about and they think the kids will be interested in reading.
I was really excited to see that Rebecca mentioned using the Earth Dragon Wakes when she generated her list of books, because that's actually a story that we've used for the last 2 years with our 4th graders because it's in our Journeys anthology. And that story it's such a great piece to use with novel engineering. The kids really start to think about sturdy structures. There's so many solutions that they came up with for this story, and my colleagues and myself both found this to be probably one of our favorite stories that we use for novel engineering. So Rebecca, I definitely think that's one you want to give a test, maybe in the future if you want to try that one out. You would find it to be very, very rewarding with your students.
Great. And, we've had lots of experience with different books, so please, once we see everybody's list, try and get those in, and we can make comments on them and tell you what we've seen, what we think is successful or not. So going back to talking about that one-page response that you have, not really a paper, so using that page 11 from the primer and design matrix that you had in the Chrisman article. And we really just want to know how that sort of changes what you're thinking about teaching, what your kids are able to do, how you can support them. If you have any questions about that, let us know. We just really want to hear what your ideas are. So please don't get really wrapped up in saying things properly or making sure that, you're citing research or anything like that. We just really want to know that what you're doing is resonating with you and with your kids. Okay,
and I just wanted to take a minute to kind of circle back around to some of the past week's assignments. I know people were on vacation last week and different things are still coming in. I wanted to just kind of make a note. Kara had a great comment on the Stable Beginnings article. She kind of gave herself a goal. She said one goal for her class would be to work on more realistic solutions despite not having all the necessary resources. I really liked Kara's goal because this reminded me of something when I was starting out with, my first challenges with my students last year. And I felt like a lot of their solutions were not very realistic. They were more magical or really, and we actually touched on this before as well. But I think that to have that as your goal, to really try to make the students understand these solutions need to be realistic. There's something that you want them to be functional. That's such a big thing. In the beginning, I think when kids are reading fantasies and fairy tales, sometimes they get off task a little bit. So even Muncha, more of a fantasy genre, I think many times kids start thinking of pretend solutions, and we still have to kind of pull them back and make them realize, okay, we really want a realistic solution. let's try to stick with something that could be realistic as opposed to magical or make-believe, like the magic elevator button.
Right. I'm wondering, I don't know this, I'm wondering if we can sort of compile, I guess you can't see me, Lisa, the three of us compile something like pictures or little videos of things kids have built that I wonder if it would be helpful to share with other students so that they understand that what they're asking to do is something functional, because I think it is sort of hard for kids initially. Even like, the backpack.
No, I agree.
Just to
especially
show.
their first challenge. And, a fictional story. Sometimes it is hard for them to grasp that right in the beginning.
Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to swing back around to was Munch a list of problems. Eric noted that his students, their list was brief, and they came up with some broad questions. And I had mentioned in my comment to him, as the students become more familiar with the challenges that they're going to be taking on, they're going to start to generate a greater list of problems. I know that in the beginning when my students were trying to get the list going, they needed a great deal of assistance from me in order to identify those problems. But by the time they got to their second challenge, they were doing so with ease.
Yeah.
And Kath, go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, and I've seen teachers say that all of a sudden their kids are just walking around after they've done it one or two times, like everything's a problem. And, in the book, they're listing tons of them, but then just walking around the school and just, smaller books that they're not even doing novel engineering with, that all of a sudden, they're able to do that pretty well.
And Kathleen also pointed out, she said, my students thought that Mr. McGreeley looked elderly and that his age would be a constraint. Could he really build a wall and a moat? They were also concerned with things being realistic. It would have to be something a real person could buy at a grocery store or a hardware store and build themselves. No cranes or heavy equipment could be used because it didn't seem like Mr. McGreeley could use that. They also said that whatever was built would have to be something that the rabbits could dig under, climb over, or swim through. My comment to Kathleen in regards to what she mentioned was, her students identified some great problems and constraints, especially seeing that this was their first novel engineering challenge. I'm really excited to see what their solutions were, and I'm guessing that based on the concerns that her students showed, about the solutions being realistic, we're going to see some practical prototypes from her class.
Awesome. Okay, so before we move on to next week 7, anything else? Anything else you guys want to add? What?
No, I think I love the comments. People are coming in with some great comments, and I think it's great to keep looking back at some of the old discussion threads, because everybody is kind of hitting on some different ideas that can be beneficial to other students in the course. Agreed.
All right, so for next week, we're going to keep it light again because we want to catch everybody up. If you're behind, our goal is to have you caught up. If you can't, let us know and we'll work with it, but just to try and make that as easy as possible. So one thing you're going to do is take a video or a picture of something your kids have already made and post this on Torch. If you can't figure out how to do that, let your TA know and we'll post it for you. And please add your first name as part of the file name. So the following week, we're going to have people comment on those, but for this week, we really just want to have you figure out how to post something on Torch. And if you can put a brief description there about what the problem was, what the kid's solution was, and what you think their idea was, how it worked. So also we're going to have you start planning for a longer unit. The first part is just to think about materials. So there is a planning document that is on the website. And you're going to do section 4, which is thinking about the materials that the students are going to have available to them and when you're going to give them to them. So are they going to have a list of materials as they're planning, not be able to touch them? Or are you going to all of a sudden just say, we're going to plan, and they can go over and take the materials and play around with them as they're planning? So we just want you to think about that. The other thing is thinking about literacy goals for your students. So not necessarily within novel engineering, but just in general from now until the end of the year. What do you want to see your students doing, and what are you going to focus on with them, so we can help you when we move to the planning section to address the reading and literacy writing. We want to make sure we have enough information there so we know what you're trying to do. And the final part for this week is watching a video called The Peach Lifter for James and the Giant Peach, the 4th grade classroom. And we really want you to focus on the student planning. We'll have a couple questions there to help you focus on what you're going to address, but that will be on Torch. Other comments? Oh, right.
For the literacy and writing goals for your students, on page 29 of, where's the cover? novel engineering booklet that we sent you, we've got a list of writing prompts and examples, which will kind of guide you in what sorts of writing goals and final products in terms of writing you can have for your students.
Excellent. All right. Thank you all. And please do not hesitate to contact us with questions or issues, or if there's something you want to hear more about. Bye-bye.